I think personally that this is one of the most amazing investment opportunities that I think I've seen in a while. And I've seen a lot of different ones out there. And the reason why I say that, and this is purely from my perspective, and this is, I'm kind of like almost like speaking to myself here, not to anyone else, because needless to say, right, like I don't really know who might be listening to this or watching this, what their financial situation may be. I'm not a licensed, financial advisor, obviously, but I do know that when you are trading at around 57 cents a share, and more specifically, when your enterprise value is, I think I computed it as being around 70 some odd million dollars several days ago. That might have changed ever so slightly just based on the stock price. But if you look at our adjusted EBITDA, or at least what we certainly have the potential to generate in the way of adjusted EBITDA, I mean, you start to look at, hey, what kind of multiple do you put on that, compared to our enterprise value? I mean, this stock looks really, really cheap, assuming we're able to do a couple things, right? First and foremost, stay in business, and we've talked about that before. And there's no reason to believe that we can't stay in business, given all of the things we've done to help us really prepare and to persevere through, right? To persevere through this crypto winter, which has been quite frigid and has unfortunately, taken a variety of businesses out with it, right? And perhaps more to come. So surviving is the first and most important thing we need to do. But also, assuming we execute on our plans to contain our costs, which again, I have no reason to doubt that we're able to do that, and I believe we have been doing that, and that we catch a little bit of a break when it comes to being able to generate profitable revenue, specifically through the margin that exists right now between super low PJM grid prices and our Bitcoin priced in dollars per megawatt hour. That gap there is a really attractive opportunity for us to generate revenue. The challenge that we've been facing lately, right, is that because our hash rate isn't, what it could be, we're not, right, I mean, this is a little bit of a controversial topic, but let's assume for a moment that we are not at 4 exahash, okay, in terms of our hash rate, okay? Well, what that means is that, let's just say we're at, I don't know, 2.5, 3, somewhere in there, depending if we're overclocking or not. The thing is, right, we're not going to generate as much profitable revenue as we could, right, at 2.5 to 3 than if we had a full 4 exahash. Because given this gap that exists between super cheap PJM grid pricing and Bitcoin priced in dollars per megawatt hour, we're just not driving as much potential revenue as we could through that gap, right? Through that wedge, through that profitable, loop or hole that exists right between those two prices. But nevertheless, we are generating, I think, very respectable revenue given what we potentially do have in our data centers. Needless to say, right, obviously it would be awesome to have those data centers filled out, right? They're built, they're ready to, have machines plugged into them. So we'll kind of see what the update has in store for us, right, during the forthcoming investor presentation. But assuming we execute, assuming we're able to drive as much profitable revenue, right, through our system, through our machine, our arbitrage machine, that's going to be really good, towards generating really, healthy adjusted EBITDA numbers. The other thing we got to really be focused on, and we're doing this as well, is to just really make sure that as it relates to managing our assets, right, that we're keeping them online as consistently as possible. It does us no good, right, to have, all the exahash in the world, but to be offline, or to have our efforts hampered by mechanical issues or data center, breakdowns. Those sorts of things, sometimes they're to a degree outside our control. But if you remember, several investor presentations ago, we talked, right, that, management, our friends in management talked about the idea of saying, hey, how do we have some spare parts on hand so that if there were to be an issue, we have some redundancy built into our system so that we're not all of a sudden finding ourselves offline rather for, 7 to 10 days while we get spare parts and then get them installed. And, why not just have the things that we might need right on site? And we've done that. So that's really, really good. So when you look at the totality of all those variables and all those things, and then you say to yourself, all right, what's the enterprise value of this company? Okay. And we look at the potential adjusted EBITDA that we're able to generate, and you say, okay, what's that ratio looking like? And I mean, what can be said about that ratio? I think there's a really strong argument to be made that we are just profoundly, profoundly undervalued based on that metric. Let alone the fact that really, I mean, if you just kind of take a step back for a moment, you look at the assets that we own, you look at all of the infrastructure we've built up. I mean, again, I've jokingly said that there are pieces of art, that have sold for more than our entire company's worth at the moment, and that's not to say that the art isn't lovely and doesn't command a premium value, but generally speaking, unless there's some new type of artwork that's out there that I'm not aware of, art generally doesn't produce cash flow, whereas our business does, and so within the grand scheme of things, I'll just make the argument that I think I'd rather see the value of our business be worth at least as much as some of the great art that's been selling out there, and hopefully a whole lot more than that, because after all, we are a going concern. We're a viable business. We generate revenue. We generate, hopefully, very healthy and sort of admirable levels of adjusted EBITDA. And I do believe that our Q4 2022 results will perhaps provide some insight into that. And certainly, if nothing else, Q1 2023 results, when they come out, I think should hopefully demonstrate that we're on the right track as it relates to generating those types of healthy, awesome, adjusted EBITDA numbers that we could all really be proud of, and then say, hey, wait a minute, you put a multiple on this, generally speaking, and this was mentioned in an investor presentation a number of quarters ago, you look at a lot of, just say energy companies generally, right? They typically trade at maybe 5 to 10 times, all right, EBITDA. Well, I mean, at the time, we were trading at about like 2 times EBITDA. And at this point, I mean, it's, do you see what I'm trying to get at? I'm not trying to belabor all these numbers to make it confusing or to make it kind of boring sounding. But at the end of the day, you really got to ask yourself, okay, what are we worth? It's like, what are we actually worth? And then like, what is the market somehow saying that we're worth? And I respect the judgment of the market because it's the market, right? I mean, that's but by the same token, I can respect the valuation that the market puts on us, but not necessarily agree with it. And I think that's what I'm kind of saying here. And I know there are a lot of us out here who've been looking at this company for a while now and, been saying to ourselves, hey man, well, when is there going to be that correction of sorts, right? Where our value as a company is actually reflected in our market value. Well, I think we're going to have to clock some very good quarterly results. I think that's going to be the basis of that reset. To some degree, it's going to require that the environment in which we're operating, right, the Bitcoin mining ecosystem as a whole, I do think that there's going to have to be a little bit of a shift in sentiment as it relates to the environment. Those two things, right, our own performance being awesome and a bit of a shift in sentiment as it relates to the sector that we're in, or at least the sector that the market kind of puts us in. Those two things happening, we're going to see a change in the stock price. So this is day 2 of our march towards, right, our, investor presentation that's going to talk about Q4 2022 results, and hopefully we'll get some commentary and color about what's going on right now in Q1 2023. So, all right, let's see what tomorrow has in store for us.